Good morning once again and welcome back to our global conference on space for emerging countries, GEC 2019. Yesterday, I think you will all agree, was a very successful day, and we are very happy to announce that today's program will be equally attractive. But before we dive into today's program, let me again remind you about our IEF app, which is, as you have realized yesterday already, the best way to interact with our speakers and moderators during the various sessions. And you see here on the slide, again, repeated all the information which you know already. So please make use of our IEF app and interact with all the speakers during the sessions, and by doing so, contribute to the outcome. Now, this morning, we will navigate in other important and challenging topics for emerging countries which wish to set up and develop their space sector. First, we will focus on one of the fundamental aspects that needs to be addressed, and that is technology and skills development. And now, in the spirit of the IEF 3G Diversity Initiative, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this session, a fantastic young professional from the region, Rania Toukebri. She is the national point of contact for Tunisia for the Space Generation Advisory Council, SGAC, one of the IEF partner organizations and the co-organizers of this afternoon's seminar. Please give a very warm applause and welcome to Rania.
Thank you, Christian, for this introduction. So today we're going to start with the third panel. First of all, we all know that the developing countries are making their first steps in the space development. So I think that we should start thinking about making them involved in the space market in a very effective way, and to maintain also the long-term sustainability in the market. So I think that one of the most important keys for that is, of course, the development of the skills development, like the technology and skills development. And today we have really great speakers, and they are experts from different backgrounds and different institutions. And we're going to discuss about the role of academia, of the government, of the companies, in the development of the national and regional space program. And we're going to discuss also together about the involvement of all the entities together and the cooperation in order to make it successful and effective. So we start with our first keynote speaker, who is Mr. Juan de Dalmo. And he is the president of the International Space University, ISU, based in Strasbourg in France. He was also the head of communication office at ESTEC, and also director of Aerospace Research Technology Center in Barcelona, and a general delegate at the Community Ariane Cities. Mr. de Dalmo, can you join me?
Salam alaikum. Bonjour. Buenos días. Ni hao. Good morning, everybody, and thank you to Rania Toukebri for the opportunity, and also to your organization that you represent, Rania, the Space Generation Advisory Council, a very interesting organization that I invite you to discover. If you don't know enough about SGAC, there's a full session this afternoon that I really look forward to attending, because SGAC is bringing together young people with new ideas. Congratulations. And I would like to thank also those who are making our job easier this morning. What I mean is the job of the Technology and Skills Development panel that I have the honor of launching this morning. So I'd like to call for the first slide. And the organizers have made our job easy, because if you look at the final program document, the very nice shiny document that we all got when we registered, if you go to page 23, you will find some keywords that the organizers have given us, the panelists, to discuss this morning during this session. And in particular, I wanted to thank those who have written page 23, and I'm sure these include Christian Feistinger and his team from the IAF. Of course, the three co-chairs of this conference, Monsieur Driss El Adani from the Royal Center for Remote Sensing of Morocco, Monsieur Jean-Pascal Lefranc from CNES, and Mr. Val Monsani from the South African Space Agency. I think these people, with their teams, have done a great job. So they are making this session easy for us because they tell us what we should discuss. They would like us to discuss topic number 1, the role of academia in technology and skills development. So what is the role of universities, training institutes, and research centers? My role for the next 5 minutes, I propose that it will be a role of launching some questions that I hope the experts in the panel will help us answer. I might make some statements that only reflect my own personal opinion. They do not reflect the opinion of the International Space University, among other reasons, because, as you know, universities don't have one opinion. Universities have as many opinions as there are people at the university. So we like to believe that universities are platforms for the free exchange of ideas and for the birth of projects. And that's what I hope we will see during the day in the discussions. So I would like to also cover a little bit what is or could be the role of governments and government agencies in the development of skills and technology related to space, of course. I would like to cover the role of companies, even if the role of companies is not mentioned on page 23. Sorry for referring to page 23, but that's where I got my homework defined for this morning. So please bear with me if I will try in the next couple of minutes to also explain what is or what could be the role of companies and private initiatives. Page 23 also asks us to discuss about the cooperation among all these partners, and there is a mention about protection of intellectual property. I'm not sure this has been discussed yet, but I hope we will, because it's an important concept, and it has a lot of influence on what we do in space. As you know, space is very often connected with defense and with dual use, but also with commercial applications. So the protection of intellectual property is an important aspect that should be part of the skills of the people who work in the space sector. And that is not always part of the curriculum. So that's something that we should discuss. And I would like to just quote one thing that we all heard if we were here yesterday morning at the very first statement. The first speaker, you will remember, was a representative from the Moroccan government, the minister in charge of industry, Mr. El Alami. He spoke in French, which is an official language here, and I'm not sure how the English translation was done because I was only listening to the French, but one sentence Minister El Alami said that has made me think a lot since yesterday morning is this one here. Ne nous piquez pas nos ingénieurs. Which means, don't take our engineers away from us. Now the word piquer is colloquial for stealing, but it's not as strong as stealing. So I would translate it as, don't take our engineers away from us. So what does this tell us? What is this telling us? Thank you. The way I interpret these words from the minister is, let's make sure that our engineers work for the development of this region. Let's try to fight the so-called brain drain. And if a top politician says this, it means that his government is dealing with this issue. It means it's important for his government. And at the same time, Minister El Alami gave us a lesson of modesty when he said, he acknowledged that he was not a space expert, but that he wanted to learn more. So I think that's our job, including our skills development. Our job is to help political decision makers in making the right decisions. So let's talk about the role of academia in all this. And here on this slide, I would like to quote the director of the Moroccan Center for Remote Sensing, Mr. Driss El Adami. He listed exactly these three, I think he called them challenges for the development, and I see you are here. So I hope I'm quoting you correctly, Mr. El Adami. You said that for many of the near spacefaring nations, these are the three main topics, the three main challenges. Resourcing, which I read as, where do we get the money? Capabilities, which I read as, how do we get the rightly trained people so that we do not have brain drain? How do we train them? How do we keep them? How do we retain the capabilities? And the third challenge that you mentioned was governance. How do we organize ourselves? How do we take decisions? How do we make sure that we don't forget anyone in the decision making, and that once we make a decision, it will be followed up and everyone will feel comfortable with it. And that's not easy. It needs special skills. So in a nutshell, what I hope our expert panel will discuss this morning is, how do we train the right people? How do we give them the right skills and the right technologies to tackle these three main challenges? And I like observing people, especially when they give us lessons of modesty. And the other speaker from yesterday that I remember giving a lecture of modesty, I'm not sure he's here, Dr. Chris Lee, the chief scientist of the United Kingdom Space Agency. He said, I'm very interested in listening to the session on financial models and resourcing. So he recognized that he would like to learn more about how to fund projects. And I hope the session this afternoon was, yesterday afternoon, was instructive to all of us on financial models and resourcing. But let us talk more about skills development. And move on now to the role of governments. In my opinion, the role of governments is to develop national plans and to bring them to fruition. Now, developing a national plan for space is not an easy task. We heard it yesterday from Minister El Alami. He said to us, I have a proposal for a space plan for Morocco on my desk since 1.5 years. And he said, I'm not 100% happy with it. So what is this telling us in terms of skills development? Well, the way I interpret the minister's words is that we need to keep trying as a space community. We need people able to talk to political decision makers, to persuade them, and to do it again and again. These things take time. I would like to give the example of the Australian space program. Some 20 years ago, the promoters for an Australian space agency and for an Australian national space program, you could count them with the 10 fingers. Some of them decided to go and get some extra skills that they did not have. They went out of their country, they went out of their way, they spent money and time to acquire some new skills in multidisciplinary space studies. So if they were engineers or if they were lawyers, they went out and learned about all other disciplines that make the Australian space advocates good communicators. And we could see that the IAF Congress 2 years ago in Adelaide, the Australian minister announced that there would be a creation of a national space agency for Australia. This was a long process. So it's more than 1.5 years. It can take 10 years. But now Australia has a space agency. There is a dedicated budget. We just saw last week the announcement of a new cooperative research center for smart satellites. And we heard the words smart yesterday used by Director El Hadani also when he talked to us about smart sensors, smart satellites, smaller, more accessible. And that's exactly how Australia is investing. Now, when you study the story of the Australian space program, you see that it took time to convince the national government. And in the process, the space advocates managed to convince first one of the state governments, the state government of South Australia. So this is an interesting example of where you can talk to different levels of political decision makers until you reach a national level. And I would be happy to discuss this and other examples of how national space policies have happened in countries that really did not have much of a space program 20 years ago. Another thing I have learned personally when listening to expert lecturers about international cooperation and about space policy is that international collaboration is a strong tool for space programs. Some people call it space diplomacy. And what I've learned in these lectures is that countries do not have friends. States do not have friends, they have allies. Meaning that when two countries decide to cooperate, it's because there is an interest on both sides. And not only because they are good friends. So for us, the space community, understanding what are the interests of our governments and why would they move and go to another country and establish a cooperative space program, if we understand those motivations, we will be much better off. And there's a very interesting example. If you take the same final program, the shiny document, on page 3, you have a full-page advertisement from a Chinese company, DFH, which is part of a large conglomerate in China. And if you look at the photo, you see there's advertisement for a series of Earth observation satellites that China has developed in collaboration with a number of countries. So there's a picture of an Earth observation satellite for Venezuela, another satellite for Pakistan, another one for Egypt, and one for Ethiopia. I think this is an interesting example of space diplomacy, where a government decides to cooperate with another government because there are things to win on both sides. And what we heard also from Mr. El Hadani yesterday is that there's an interest in increasing the collaboration south-south between countries who have similar interests in development and similar interests in helping their improvement of their society using space technology. And here I find a very interesting case with the space program in India. where the concept of frugal engineering, in other words, low-cost engineering, has been really a showcase of how India, with limited resources, has been able to develop a full range of space capabilities. Now, how did this happen? Well, through international collaboration, in a large part. When we look at the collaboration, the history of collaboration between France and India, you see that these are, probably today we could call them friends, but they started as allies, and this alliance has survived for many, many years, and it has worked very well in the area of space transportation, in the area of Earth observation, for meteorology, for disaster management, etc. So that's the role of governments, but let's move on. What should be, my personal, humble opinion, the role of companies in all this? And for those of you who are working for companies or who are entrepreneurs in the room, I hope that you will agree with me in that I'm giving you a piece of homework, dear entrepreneurs and dear representatives from commercial companies. I think the role of space companies, or the role of space-related companies, is to help the governments. Because companies have a lot of knowledge. They know about the markets, they know about the needs, they know the type of services that might be needed, that can be sold for money. And many times governments need this advice. And we see examples in emerging space countries and in very well-established space countries where companies and the space industries in general are helping the government in defining their space plans and the space programs. The UK, for instance, some 15 years ago, the first studies suggesting to the UK government that space was a good investment for economic growth, those first studies were drafted by industry associations. They were giving the analysis and the numbers of return. How much return would UK industry obtain from government investments in space? Australia is another one. In France, there is a very well-established system whereby private companies are giving advice to the government on the next space program. We heard it yesterday also from our South African friend, Val Monsani, how the government of South Africa has been able to develop a space strategy. And the type of skills, and I'm coming to the conclusion, the type of skills that are needed for people to be able to persuade the political decision makers are skills that embrace a variety of disciplines that include technical, scientific, policy, regulations, economy, and also communication and public relations. Now, some of you might be asking yourselves, that's all very nice, but having those skilled people who are multidisciplinary in the way they can act, the way they can network, this is something that only large companies or rich companies can afford. You might say, yeah, that's okay, Airbus or Thales Alenia or DFH or Telespazio, they have the means to hire very well-trained people who are multidisciplinary, who have the right skills. I would like to challenge that thought, because if you go to the courtyard and visit the different booths there, you will find some very, very small companies, some very young companies like Space BD or like Open Cosmos. These companies were, in some cases, founded by people who went to study multidisciplinary space, or at least have hired people. So please go and talk to them. You don't need to be a very big company to have in your staff people who are really well trained in multidisciplinary space. So to conclude, I have dared completing what the minister said yesterday morning, and this will be again in French, where I would like to suggest that when the minister gives his next speech, he does not only say "Ne nous piquez pas nos ingénieurs," don't steal our engineers. I believe the minister could also say, don't take our scientists away, don't take our economists away, our entrepreneurs, our lawyers, our political decision makers, or our communicators. And by this, we mean, of course, that these people, we need them independently of where they work, for what company or for what organization, or from what country, as long as they remember where they come from and that in their everyday work they can help with the development of their home country. And with this, I would like to wish to you all and to the distinguished panel a fruitful discussion. Hopefully not all of you will think the same way, so I would like to hear some challenges like we do at universities. Thanks again to Rania Toukebri and to SGAC for the opportunity and for making this a lively discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hidalgo, for this terrific presentation. Now I'm going to ask my panelists to join me on stage, please. First, I would like to go through the poll question for Mr. Hidalgo, if it's possible to show it, please. Okay, then in this case, we move to the next speaker. Mr. Al-Hashimi Sadiqi, who is the Dean of the Aerospace Engineering School of the International University of Rabat, Morocco. The talk is yours now.
Thank you, Mr. Rania. Good morning, everybody. I'm the Dean of Aerospace Engineering School at the University International of Rabat, which is located in Rabat Saleh, in the way of between when you go to Tanger, is the highway close by. And it's an engineering school. It has also other disciplinary discipline also. So just for this question of aerospace and how the emerging countries will contribute to that. So until 2000, space activities were conducted by governmental agencies or institutions like NASA and ESA. And with the technological advancement in electronic component and software engineering these days, university students could be able to design, fabricate, test, and operate their own satellite. So this is a new development. Now many universities are involved in CubeSat development. CubeSat is a very attractive platform because it's a low-cost development and fast delivery and standard launching methods. That was not possible in the past. These universities' activities make a paradigm shift from large, expensive, and long development time to small, low-cost, and fast delivery micro nano satellite. Now, private sector and startups of micro nano satellite are expanding. Most of these entities operated by engineers who built university satellite during their study at university. So micro nano satellites are very attractive space asset for the emerging countries because of their, as I said, low development cost and fast delivery. University students are a vital component to the development of a micro and nano satellite project. It started from there. So development of such satellite, it's a complex and is a multidisciplinary field, which include this task is mission design, for example, which is very important, hardware and software development, environmental testing, launching, safety considerations, ground station development, operation and administrative issues such as frequency, object registration, and so on. So successful project should conduct all these above mentioned tasks thoroughly. Now we have to know that RD University here, for example, in the emerging countries, are having this program that is tackling all this. It's very, very difficult to say. So aerospace engineering curriculum in universities in Morocco and most emerging countries do not tackle all these issues. So that is why cooperation in satellite development is needed, and it's very, very important. So that's why we have to think of consortium that will assemble the emerging countries and develop the advanced, technologically advanced countries in this field. And it's to develop this. So hands-on training for universities, university students prior to real spacecraft development is crucial. CubeSat project launching with a model rocket is an excellent example for such training. So we have to train highly qualified engineers that are multitask, and then we have different engineers, which each one has its own expertise, and then we can combine them in a team project. Addressing mission with the national need can contribute to the finding of such project. To have money and to support this project, we have to look into the application for each country, and that will help giving funds in this. So Morocco, we know that we need water, so desalination is a very important issue, desertification, and for the environmental issue, we have to see the forest, how they are evolving and so on. This could be a good application. And also, for example, we talked yesterday about high-speed internet that could have other application, having e-teaching, e-learning, and so on. That will give more insight to this. So, in that, so the idea here to help universities to train highly qualified engineers and multitask, multidisciplinary. I think there is a need for a consortia or consortium for Africa, and as you said, cooperation between South-South and North-South. And you can think of a project or call for proposals like they are doing with the Mediterranean countries. We can say call for proposal for satellite development with different applications, where we join advanced countries with the emerging countries. And that will be a must to have this the funding for this. And then also we don't forget that having the internship, so the advanced companies will accept students from our universities to have an internship and to be trained in that sense. We have to define also a roadmap for specifying technological gap for satellite development for emerging countries that are needed. Also for the teaching way to be efficient, we have the specification or the accreditation, A-BATE accreditation, which in my sense, it is a must for all countries to adopt and to look for. A-BATE is very, very important for engineering training. So around that, I think you have to make in Africa, for example, which is Morocco has a strategic decision to have South-South with Africa and to work in that. So to have a space agency more active and to cooperate with the help of advanced country. So creation of startups for research and development lab universities. The graduate students are the driving force for this. In addition to engineers, we have also PhD and graduate studies that will help in this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sadi. Now we move to our next panelist, who is Mr. Otto Koudelka. Mr. Koudelka is the head of Institute of Communication Network and Satellite Communications. He's a professor, actually, at the University of Graz, and his main research fields are nanosatellite technology and satellite communications. He was also IF Vice President of Technical Activities, and he's currently the chair of the IF Space Universities and Administrative Community, SWAC. The talk is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to follow up what Dean Esadigi just said, and since this panel is concerned with technology and skills development, I would focus on an activity where we are heavily involved, and these are small satellites. Since the beginning of the space age, satellites have become a commodity. Everybody is using them without thinking very much about it. Everybody is using the smartphone for navigation. Navigation has become very easy to the extent that humankind is just losing the ability to read a map in the same way as we lost the ability some 40 years ago to do calculations by heart, but this is another story. Remote sensing satellites are indispensable means for disaster management, agriculture, the detection of Earth resources, are key for climate change research, one of our main challenges. So, in the early 2000 paradigm shift, as you mentioned, took place with the introduction of the CubeSat concept. This was an idea by two Stanford professors to train students in all aspects of space development, as it was said. I mean, students had been involved in space activities, developing some experiments, but never the whole development chain. And the first CubeSats were launched in the early 2000s, and I looked up a database. By January 2019, 2,250 nanosatellites and CubeSats have been launched. There has been an exponential increase in the numbers, and more recently, larger CubeSats, the regional ones, were really very small, 10 times 10 times centimeters, 1 kilogram. Now we are building much larger ones, and in the exhibition we can see that. An important aspect is here that there are more and more possibilities to get a passenger ride on a launcher, which reduces the cost. And in February 2017, a record was set with 104 satellites launched on a single rocket. And there are some videos which are quite impressive, how they get out of the launcher. Initially, the success rate of these CubeSats was not very high. I mean, this is the normal learning curve. Also, the big spacefaring nations in the beginning had their problems, and this is part of education. I mean, you learn by your failures and you make it better the next time. Nowadays, commercial activities have taken over, and there are already some very successful commercial services. I would like to mention two, Planet Labs, or Planet as it's called now, a constellation of more than 150 CubeSats, remarkable achievement for Earth observation with a very high revisit time. And the constellation is complemented by larger satellites, which give them a higher resolution. In addition, another commercial endeavor, Spire, a constellation of CubeSats for improving the safety of aeronautical and maritime travel with monitoring AIS and ADS-B signals. And then, of course, we are seeing now the introduction of the big LEO constellations for telecommunications, so providing internet access at high speed everywhere, so even the polar bears and the penguins will then have Twitter and Facebook because it's ubiquitous there. And I would like to mention here that these small satellites are an excellent means for educating young engineers, scientists, technicians in all aspects of space development, electrical, mechanical engineering, thermal engineering, but also project management, operations even, operating their own ground stations, and they also learn about managing a project and taking care of the regulatory and legal aspects. And therefore, these small satellites are an excellent entry ticket for emerging and developing countries to get involved in space activities at relatively low costs. Example applications are clearly remote sensing, but also telecommunications for messaging, IoT, sensor networks, and you can do that with relatively small and inexpensive satellites. In this aspect, I would like to mention that due to the high number, exponential growth of the small satellites, there are some aspects which should be borne in mind. Proper frequency coordination with the ITU, not always made. Proper registration with the UN, and also adherence to the regulations to avoid space debris. So in summary, the nanosatellites have matured from, as it was sometimes called, toys for universities to practical and commercial systems. Despite the fact that most of them are built with commercial off-the-shelf hardware, they show that demanding technological or scientific missions can be fulfilled with low-cost spacecraft, and the own constellation we're involved in for space astronomy was designed for 2 years, and we are now more than 6 years in orbit. So this compares well with larger projects. Finally, I want to mention again what was announced yesterday. IAF and JK Launch Services starts a CubeSat competition with a free launch of a 1U CubeSat. This is for members of the IAF, and priority will be given to space universities for developing countries. So this is a great opportunity, and I'm looking forward to seeing exciting proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Otto. This sounds great. But by the way, I just want to add one word. You mentioned the 50 CubeSats, one of the constellations that were launched. And talking about skills development, so my graduation project was one of the CubeSats that were launched. So just to compare. Now we have our next speaker, Mr. Aminu, who is the Program Officer of the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. And he's in charge of the implementation of projects under the Human Space Technology Initiative of INOSA. Mr. Amin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, for your introduction. So, distinguished guests, colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the International Astronautical Federation to invite me to talk here, especially for this session. So it's my pleasure to represent the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs to share our initiatives and activities to bridge the space divide, especially in emerging countries. At the time when every country is striving to achieve the goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, it is very important to understand to what extent space could contribute to the achievement of the SDGs. Our office have ever conducted a joint study together with the European GNSS agency. This study indicated that 65 out of 169 targets enshrined in the SDGs are directly benefiting from the use of geolocation satellite and also the Earth observation satellite, so almost 40%. If we include telecommunication satellites, this number would go over 60%. So that means space science, technology, and their applications is of great value for every country to achieve the goals of the SDG. But however, there are million people who lack access to even basic benefit of space technology and their applications. So bridging the gap in capacity in space sector is very crucial. Our office is the UN Organization for Space Affairs. It also serves as the secretariat of the United Nations Committee of Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. We are sitting at the heart of the global development in the space sector. It leverages the convening power of the UN to connect established and emerging space sectors. Now we are collaborating with national governments, national and regional space agencies, private sectors, civil society, as well as other UN entities, including in Vienna, New York, Geneva, and the field office in the world. In order to open the space sector to ensure the benefits of space technology are made available to everyone, everywhere. Over the last 60 years, our office has already conducted more than 400 capacity building activities, reaching 24,000 applicants. In 2010, our office launched the Human Space Technology Initiative, which is aimed to bring together every country together to promote international cooperation on human space exploration related activities, and also bring them together to conduct research under the microgravity science. Last year, during the high-level forum in Bonn, Germany, we also launched the Access to Space for All initiative, which is established under the activities which were conducted before under the Human Space Technology Initiative. So this initiative, Access to Space for All initiative, is a great example of triangular cooperation, which is bring together UN space, established space agencies and also the non-space or non-spacefaring countries together to work together to unlock the space benefits. So these partnerships with a diverse group of international communities bring together to a range of activities from microgravity science, hypergravity science, satellite development, and in-orbit research, as well as access to the International Space Station and China Space Station. So the purpose for this initiative is for research and education purpose. I would like to give you several examples which our office is conducting. So now we have 7 substantial activities. In the field of scientific research, we are collaborating with China, the Human Space Technology Agency, CMSA, China Manned Space Agency, to open China Space Station to the world, inviting all member states to conduct their space experiments on board the station, including using the facilities to be developed by member states or will be already developed by Chinese scientists. For the first cycle, we have already received 42 applications from 27 countries. 18 proposals have already been shortlisted. So we will make final selection in June during Corpus time. On the first day of Corpus this year in June, on 12th of June, we will announce the result. So I hopefully you can join us the event. This short list applicants are also include one from International Space University from ICU, France. Okay. So this is a scientific area. In the field of education and for young generation, we are collaborating with German Space Agency, DLR, to open the access to the drop tower in Bremen. This project, we have already conducted 5 cycles. So 5 teams from 5 developing countries, they already had opportunity to perform the experiment using these drop tower facilities. And also this year, we signed the MOU with ESA, European Space Agency, to open the access to the large diameter centrifuge located at Aztec, Netherlands. The first call for applications will be announced soon shortly. We already dropped the AO. Yes, the AO is now under the approval by ESA. So that's the third applications. In the field of small satellite, we have 2 projects. One is our long-term fellowship program with the Japan government. It is a 3 years studying program. So we open this opportunity to invite, so every cycle we invited 2 or 3 students from developing countries to study the technology in small satellite design, development, testing, and also they provide a launch service for this project which students can carry out. The second one is in small satellite. We are cooperation with JAXA to open access to International Space Station. We invite member states of the United Nations to apply for every year 1 or 2 opportunities to deploy their small satellites using the release facilities on board the cable module, yes, on the International Space Station. So it's already 3 or 4 cycles already conducted. It's a very good example in the small satellite development. In the field of space data, we are collaborating with the government of Italy to just launch the open, it's called Open Universe Initiative, to access and utilize the data, space data, which we gathered from space infrastructure. This project is aimed to address the full cycle of disaster management, to access and utilize this data, and also to enrich our space exploration by understanding the space phenomena and unlocking the mystery of the universe. So this is our project. We are collaborating with the governmental agencies. Besides this, we are also doing a cooperation with private sector, including the cooperation with Sierra Nevada Corporation, SNC, to utilize their Dream Chaser to fly payloads from member states, and then this payload could be landed on some country when the Dream Chaser lands on the ground. The second one is, yesterday our colleague from Airbus already mentioned, we also opened the opportunity to use the Bartholomew facility, which will be launched soon to the ISS. So this will be another opportunity for conducting research to observe the universe or to monitor the Earth for Earth observation. So this is some examples which the Office for Outer Space Affairs is conducting now. So we hope these opportunities could provide access to space for every country, everyone, including students, researchers, university professors. So these are our collaboration initiatives. I believe through this access to space initiative, we can bring together to develop the benefits of space and technology, science. And I would like to invite you to join us, because now we are still missing several opportunities. For example, using the sounding rocket, parabolic flights, and also use the launchers. For example, yesterday I've opened the opportunity with GK University. So we're also seeking this opportunity to collaborate with us, because collaborating with us is free of charge. Our opportunities is totally free. You only pay your development cost, testing, and we fly to space for free of charge. So I hope this my talking could bring something to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ngu. Now we have Mrs. Amal Layeshi, who is head of the Capacity Building Department, Royal Center of Remote Sensing in Morocco. And she's head of the training department at the Royal Center of Remote Sensing Space, in charge of the national and regional capacity development activities. The talk is yours.
Merci Rania. Donc, bonjour à tous, je suis très honorée de participer à ce panel qui en fait traite d'un sujet très important qui est le développement et le renforcement des capacités, très important pour les pays en développement, qui est le sujet majeur de notre rencontre dans cette conférence. Et donc pour ma part, j'aimerais partager avec vous, en tant qu'appartenant à une institution gouvernementale, partager avec vous quelques axes prioritaires pour les gouvernements dans les pays en développement. Donc, à mon sens, les gouvernements dans les pays en développement doivent véritablement favoriser et soutenir la mise en place d'un écosystème national pour le développement du spatial, et avec essentiellement une approche intégrée et progressive, et qui doit en fait intégrer les différentes composantes dans cet écosystème. Ces composantes sont essentiellement, donc bien sûr, les universités, c'est les start-up et les entreprises, c'est les institutions gouvernementales, les associations, et qui doit essentiellement se baser sur le développement et des capacités et des besoins prioritaires de chaque pays. Alors en fait, les approches sont multiples et doivent être, je dirais, assez complémentaires. La première approche, c'est essentiellement les jeunes. Donc il s'agit de développer une culture et un esprit chez les jeunes, où l'espace n'est pas simplement un rêve, mais aussi une science et une technique qui est utilisée quotidiennement et qui propose des solutions dans différents domaines de la vie, que ce soit dans la santé, l'éducation, le transport, l'énergie. Et ce volet doit se concentrer sur les jeunes pour stimuler leur passion et leur intérêt à l'espace. Donc plusieurs initiatives dans ce sens international existent de par le monde, et les pays en développement pourraient en tirer bénéfice. Les clubs de l'espace, les concours, les associations spatiales. Le deuxième volet, en fait, dans ces axes prioritaires, c'est essentiellement le développement des compétences au niveau des universités. Alors, les universités, par le soutien de la formation et à la recherche scientifique, et particulièrement la recherche appliquée, dans le cadre de programmes nationaux de recherche. Il est important de développer des programmes nationaux de recherche soutenus par des fonds de recherche publics et privés. Et essentiellement, la création de filières de formation au niveau des universités. Alors, l'expérience au Maroc est importante parce que, en fait, les universités publiques et privées se sont engagées depuis, je dirais, sur cette voie depuis un certain nombre d'années, où aujourd'hui on trouve au sein des universités un certain nombre de programmes, un certain nombre de filières, de cours spécialisés qui traitent l'espace comme un outil incontournable dans le domaine incontournable au développement. Et dans ce sens, l'expérience du CRTS dans le développement de la recherche appliquée, donc le CRTS s'est engagé depuis plusieurs années en partenariat avec les universités marocaines, internationales et les utilisateurs locaux dans des projets de recherche qui en fait tiennent compte du développement de la technologie, particulièrement aujourd'hui les technologies d'intelligence artificielle, le développement des programmes spatiaux et aussi les besoins des utilisateurs dans les domaines prioritaires tels que l'eau, l'agriculture, les risques naturels, l'énergie, etc. D'ailleurs, depuis plus d'une quinzaine d'années, le CRTS a accueilli plus de 300 étudiants qui, aujourd'hui, ont été co-encadrés avec les universités nationales et, bien sûr, l'objectif est de développer des méthodologies adaptées à notre contexte national. Alors là aussi, le rôle de la coopération est très important parce que beaucoup de choses sont faites et il s'agit aujourd'hui de faire un transfert du savoir-faire et de technologie en essayant d'adapter et de contextualiser les méthodes qui ont été développées par ailleurs. Et tout ceci pour, bien sûr, avoir un gain de temps. Le troisième volet qui est très important par rapport, je dirais, au rôle des gouvernements, c'est de susciter et d'encourager l'utilisation du spatial, de ces technologies au niveau des institutions et des agences gouvernementales et du secteur privé. Alors, la sensibilisation et le développement des compétences au sein de ces institutions ont pour rôle prioritairement d'augmenter le potentiel des utilisateurs, mais aussi d'intégrer ces techniques spatiales et de remplacer les techniques conventionnelles et de travail par l'intégration de ces technologies spatiales. Donc, les institutions doivent comprendre le rôle de ces technologies spatiales, de mieux les intégrer et de comprendre l'adéquation entre leur métier et l'apport de ces technologies spatiales. Alors, dans ce sens aussi, le CRTS a considéré je dirais, cet axe stratégique depuis la création comme étant un axe stratégique très important parce que nous avons accompagné les institutions nationales et régionales par plusieurs actions de sensibilisation et de formation qui ont aujourd'hui conduit les institutions à utiliser les technologies d'observation de la Terre, qui est le principal métier du CRTS, dans leur travail quotidien. Et chose qui est très importante parce qu'aujourd'hui, nous avons formé quelques 3000 participants autour de 200 modules de formation. Ce sont des formations qui sont très opérationnelles parce qu'il s'agit essentiellement de les mettre dans des contextes très pratiques où les utilisateurs développent des projets, essayent de comprendre comment ces images satellites peuvent être utiles dans leur métier et bien sûr essayer d'utiliser ces techniques au sein de leur métier et de leur travail quotidiennement. Alors, ce qui est important dans ce genre de formation, c'est bien sûr de continuer et renforcer ces formations. Il est très important de continuer à les renforcer, de renforcer la sensibilisation des décideurs, qui est aussi très important à mon sens, mais aussi de développer de la coopération nord-sud, mais aussi de la coopération sud-sud, parce que ces formations peuvent être aussi généralisées et implémentées par ailleurs. Et je vous remercie.
Merci, Madame. Now we have Mr. Pierluigi Mancini, if I pronounce well. He's the Navy's Program Manager, European Space Agency, ESA, and he has more than 35 years of experience in the space sector. After several years of research and development activities in the space-borne radar domain, he has been involved in the definition and implementation of several ESA missions. The talk is yours.
Thank you, Rania. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I will try to add some element on the discussion of what is technology and skill development in the space sector. In a way, this is the same mandate that we had in the European Space Agency several years ago. I will try to give some of the ingredients that I think are necessary, possibly not sufficient, and also to do some comment on the preliminary introduction, since I have a slightly different opinion. First of all, we are talking of a sector that is vulnerable, highly subsidized, that just in Europe, to tell you the number, we are talking of less of 40,000 people. So it's peanuts with respect to serious business in many other industrial sectors. It's very important as a sector, it's very vulnerable, and it took us very long time to build up this competence in Europe. Why? First of all, there were very few anchor tenant programs of military nature, mainly in 2 countries, that has been at the heart of the development of space capability in the United States. That's a fundamental issue. So when you actually decide how I can develop technology skill in any kind of developing country, because also in Europe there are a lot of developing countries that are underestimated. I come personally from the south of Italy, and there is enormous difference in economy trend if you talk about south of Italy or UK, for instance. So the ingredients are more or less the same all over. First of all is you cannot invest in everything. It's actually a dream. And in a lot of sectors, the know-how is quite trivial. So you have to make priority. And how do you make priority? You start to make priority to understand what are the global trends. There are not only needs in a country, there are needs worldwide. Internet of Things is something that is worldwide. When you land over Marrakesh and you see all the satellite dishes, this is something that possibly some years ago they were considered into the divide. It's not the case. You will have like satellite telecommunication, you will have PNT technology coming on board, and so on and so on. There is the same amount of smartphone here as you have in Italy or UK. So frankly speaking, the first thing is to understand where do you want to invest and what are the areas that are needed to be filled. And this is very important because the sector are global, autonomous vehicle, autonomous shipping, you will have all this sector, integrity. This is another sector that will grow. And the trends are very clear. If you take the sector we are working intensely in ESA, that is GNSS, largely PNT, you will discover that is the sector that is presenting the highest growth in the future. We are talking of $200 billion in 2025. That means, as a matter of fact, it is a sector that has the greatest potential ever seen. Most of the biggest corporate are investing in this sector. PNT, it is the future. There is no discussion that you would see many type of company working on it. At today, a lot of them. So the first question is how you can enter in a sector, how you can develop technology. First of all, you have to go, in my personal opinion, go away from the word space. Space is a very small word. It's a part of any solution. If you take autonomous vehicle, you will think that via GPS or Galileo or Beidou or GLONASS, you are driving the car. No, not at all. So you have to try to think that space is just a small answer to the full question. The same applies to telecommunication. Satellite telecommunication is a very small answer to the telecommunication problem. Most of the telecommunication is going to come in this country via 4G, 5G, you name it. That is the reality. It's important, but it's a part of the solution. So the first thing, you should not develop know-how only linked to space, but largest. Therefore, we are talking of ICT knowledge. This is very important. Second of all, choose your sector on the value chain. If you take, for instance, policy that has been taken in UK, where it was mentioned in the strategic plan, a lot of investment, a lot of effort in UK are done on the downstream, on the application. Why? It's where there is the return of investment, where the people are generally looking for turnover. And this is a very serious business. So the first question is, if you want to develop know-how, you have to decide in the value chain which part of the sector is the one that you consider more profitable and at the same time more important for your country. Look at the global trend. Another thing that was very much stressed was patent. This is at the heart. Today you don't buy a company because you have tangible asset. This is no more than 20% of the value of a company. It's peanuts. You buy for the intelligence of the company, for the patent, for the royalty, this is the way company finance their own R&D. So at the heart of the day, you have to make sure that everything that is developed in this country or in any country is well protected for the benefit of the SME or for any company. This is fundamental. This is the real fight behind when a company acquires another company at any level. Another thing is important, in my opinion, is to help the kind of bridging between academia, university, small and medium enterprise, spin-off, garage box. This is the key of innovation in the United States. People think in the United States the innovation is coming by the big prime financed by the DoD program. It's not true. The big innovation is coming from small and medium enterprise, spinning off from university academia. Of course, academia university are getting money also from DoD for specific technology research. But at the heart, we have to create this bridge. company that can be created by PhD coming out from university are fundamental. If you don't create this transition, you are stuck to become only a client or main prime from Europe or company from Europe. But if you want to create your know-how, build your capacity, you must create this bridge. This is fundamental. And preserve your patent and license. If you don't do so, you are prone to lose. Another thing that I would like to say, it's at the same time, one of the important things wherever you create a plan for investment is sustainability. We did some experience, and I'm here with colleagues that we built up some telemedicine services here, and specifically also in Senegal. And we discovered how difficult it is in the moment you stop, let's say, the funding and the support and the combination of the team to give sustainability. This has to be at the heart. We should avoid that any kind of effort stop in the moment the public funding finish. We should think of sustainability. What is the follow-up? And here I stop my intervention. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Mr. Tidiane Ouattara. Is it correct? He is a space science expert and GMS and Africa's program coordinator, an African Union Commission. He also worked as an advisor at the Canadian Space Agency, at the Department of Natural Resources in Canada, and also as a manager of the Department of Environment in Canada. The talk is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam. Thanks for that opportunity offered to me, because over the last 2 days, I've been seeing myself in the middle of the different discussions as a person coming from emerging country, being trained in developed country, and having worked for several years in that developed country. Today, talking about skill development, technology and skills development, I would rather say learning, training, and skill development. Learning by curiosity, because space is serving people, supporting people. We have to learn on these people to be able to support them better. Secondly, we have to allow these people to learn a bit on what we are doing to be able to express well their needs. Training and capacity and skills development, that can be appropriate for our community. But I will not talk about the role of the government. I will not talk about the role of academia. I will not talk about the role of the private sector. Rather, I will raise some element for your consideration in your thoughts, in your actions, and in your activities. What does it mean? Space by nature is a cross-cutting issue. We do not have choice. We need to know at least a bit on several things or deeply on several things. But can we be very well trained or skilled on space matters? My answer is no. That is an area in a continual development and evolution. We have to keep the momentum. We have to be up to date, meaning we have to continue learning. Then they continuously, I would say the ongoing learning is something the space community should adopt as, I would say, practice. Secondly, being a cross-cutting issue, trying to understand and know on a bit on all of these things, it requires two things. Those who are hiring people, you have to be patient, because it takes time to know on several things. Secondly, those also who are learning, I just want to be frank with you. You won't be expert in all of these things. You have to make a choice, as Mr. Pierre-Luigi said. Make a choice. Know a lot about others, but be expert in one or two to be able to serve. You cannot lead a space agency or lead a project and work on finance, work on program management, work on these things. It is very difficult. Space by nature requires four pillars. The first one is policy. The second one is program. The third one is resource mobilization, including funding and engaging people, having the right people. And the fourth one is partnership. It could be national, local, or international, or regional, be it. But these four pillars are where we are. This is where we need people. This is where we want to train people. As I said, being a very good leader is what it requires, the leadership. And we have training in leadership. The space community should look at that angle. Another point I want to make here is the capacity building. Today, with respect to Africa, by the modest position we have today, we are facing, and we have the privilege and honor to meet with people from the 55 African countries. Sometimes it is about capacity utilization, not capacity building per se. How many Africans have been trained, for example, in Earth observation since the last 20 years? Thousands. We have a database from the last projects funded by the European Commission. We call MESA. It is an Earth observation project for environment. 1,000 people have been trained on over 4 years. If you add that to the thousands people trained over the 15 other years before, and even before that, it is a lot. But are we using them appropriately? Some of them even went to other subject matter. They changed completely. They were trained. It is not about the work availability. Sometimes it is about the utilization we are doing. Secondly, in Africa, 60% of the population is below 35 years. Youth is a very important key for emerging countries. I had the privilege also to know South America. Yes, I did my PhD in Bolivia while I was at the University of Sherbrooke. It was my field. And by my position at the Canadian Space Agency, where I was international relations managers, I had that opportunity to know also this area. Yes, Brazil is there. Yes, Argentina is there. But other countries are emerging countries. Even those I've quoted, they are looking for their way. Are we, again, taking into account the youth in our training plan? In Africa, specifically, the women should be a priority. In the area of science and technology in general, women are absent, or not absent. I'm not saying 0-0, but we have to increase the level to where it should be. Not because they are women, because they are part of the population that is left out of the system. In training, that should be a special consideration. Then, my second last point is the cultural issues. We are talking about training, learning, capacity development, all these things, without taking into account the cultural issues. For example, language can be a barrier, for sure. If you send a Francophone guy to an Anglophone area asking him to learn, you have to be patient, because you have to learn first the language and secondly to be there. But if this person is learning in his a language of choice, I would say you will reduce the time in terms of the efficiency. You can see that. Then the emerging countries, or dealing with emerging countries on training, it should be really interesting to look at the language, to look at the way people learn in these areas. That is very important. I will tell you there are several projects, and that have been witnessed by the European researchers. When they went to Africa, they validated their institute data thanks to the local communities. They learned from local communities. These are the kind of lessons we have to learn when we are talking about training. And the last point is the personal commitment. I know it can be shy. One of my mentors, Dave Kendall, who is in the room here, in 2004, he was Director General at the Canadian Space Agency, and I was a young staff, and I went to him, and I said, I'm International Relations Manager, but I really want to bring something to Africa. He just, as my mentor, because mentoring, coaching are very important also in training, very important, critical, I would say. He just told me, yes, Tidiane, you are coming from Côte d'Ivoire. It is in Africa. But you learned here and you worked here. Do you really know Africa? Instead of being shocked, he was inviting me to consider the difference on the ground. Since 2016, I've been in Africa. I will tell you, the reality is different. Instead of training people in Europe and sending them, or in America and sending them, it could be also an opportunity to go and train people in the environment to understand the reality. That allows you to innovate also in the approach. I will stop here. We'll have time to go through the questions. And these points are my own point of view, based on my modest knowledge on this area. But again, these points are to invite all of us to think on or of how we move forward with the space community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yatare. Our last speaker will be Mr. Jörg Feustel-Büchel, who is a space consultant, and he's supporting the German Aerospace Center, DLR, and other national and international research organizations and industrial companies, and he's also advisor at the European Space Agency, ESA. The talk is yours.
Thank you very much for your introduction. I followed yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, the discussion, and for me one of the most interesting questions was how can developed and experienced space nations and agencies support developing space nations in building up their space programs. And I personally see actually two possibilities to do this in a practical way. One is, of course, to actually enhance cooperation between developed countries and developing space nations, but not by selling products and services to these countries, but following what Mr. Dalmau quoted when he quoted the minister, "Ne nous piquez pas nos ingénieurs," I mean a frank and open cooperation with two partners at equal level. I will not dwell more on that, even that is a very interesting subject, but I will come to my preferred subject. I think the second avenue which I see actually in cooperation of these two partners is in making the wealth of experience available to newcomers in the space activities, in the space arena. For instance, in Europe, but of course it is also valid for other countries and continents, there has been an enormous wealth of know-how and patents and experience generated over the past 50 years. And this know-how, I think, should be made available to new partners. And one of the tools which can be used in order to make this know-how available is to use so-called business incubation centers. What is a business incubation center? A business incubation center is basically a non-profit organization with experts in space and experts in business management that support young entrepreneurs to build up their new enterprise. They do it financially, and they do it also with by mentoring these new entrepreneurs in their new undertaking. And just to give one example, the European Space Agency has actually established these business incubation centers in the past years with, I think, tremendous success. There are, in the meantime, 20 business incubation centers spread over 60 locations in Europe, and they have generated more than 800 new companies with more than 4,000 employees, making a turnover of more than 150 million euros per year. You will certainly hear more about these big business incubation centers from Mr. Eldering tomorrow at the session number 5. And I think this is a very valid model, in my opinion, to actually act as an element of cooperation between developing space nations and experienced space nations. On the other side, I was quite surprised and quite touched by the fact that even in Morocco, there already are existing business incubation centers, of course not for space matters, but for instance, for agricultural matters. Several universities are operating such centers in order to help young people to found their own organization. And that could match very well and come to a fruitful cooperation between Europe and Morocco as a first element of such a business incubation center, but this could be a model case for further such centers in Africa. Therefore, I have made a while ago already a concrete proposal for establishing a first business incubation center here in Morocco. I've made this proposal to the European Space Agency, ESA, and to some member states, for instance, the French organization Centre National d'Études Spatiales, CNES, which have a close relation to Moroccan activities to operate such a system jointly. And it was also made through CRTS here in Morocco to the Moroccan government. And I would be very pleased if such a center could be established, because it provides an opportunity for young people to quickly start a business based on experience and know-how, which is freely made available to them for their entrepreneurship. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Actually, it was programmed that Mr. Carlo Viberti would be with us in this panel, but unfortunately he couldn't be here because of some inconvenience. But I think we have a video from him, about 3-4 minutes, about the activities of Spaceland in Africa, in Mauritius, and their plans for the future. If you can show us the video. Thank you so much. I have a question to Madame Laishi and to all of you as well. I would like to know what do you think about the priorities of the skills development, technology and skills development, because we cannot do everything now, so what do you think? Okay.
Merci Rania. Donc par rapport à cette question, en fait l'objectif aujourd'hui dans les pays, c'est essentiellement de développer l'utilisation du spatial. Le développement de l'utilisation du spatial doit être bien sûr organisé avec des axes prioritaires. Et un axe prioritaire, c'est d'abord de bien étudier le besoin dans ces pays. Quels sont les véritables besoins d'utilisation et quels sont les besoins en formation qui doivent être adaptés à ces utilisations. Donc l'évaluation des besoins est un élément fondamental qui doit être, je dirais, un travail assez régulier et assez permanent et qui doit permettre aux institutions d'intégrer ces technologies de manière utile et, je dirais, et de manière quotidienne dans le métier. Le deuxième volet, c'est l'aspect de la sensibilisation. Aujourd'hui, on parle beaucoup, beaucoup de choses ont été faites dans le domaine de la sensibilisation, mais il reste encore beaucoup à faire. Il reste beaucoup à faire. Je pense que nous l'avons bien compris à travers les interventions précédentes. Sensibiliser les décideurs, sensibiliser les managers, sensibiliser donc toutes ces personnes qui sont en fait aujourd'hui qui doivent orienter les politiques nationales et orienter les organisations à utiliser les technologies spatiales. Donc il est très important à mon sens de développer ce volet-là parce qu'il est fondamental dans les pays en développement d'orienter les utilisations. La deuxième, je dirais, un volet aussi qui est important, c'est les projets. Les projets, en fait, la formation par les projets. Nous avons compris depuis un certain nombre d'années au niveau du CRTS que travailler sur un projet et mettre je dirais, les utilisateurs dans des conditions opérationnelle était je dirais, une manière de faire très importante qui permet un transfert de savoir-faire et une prise en main par la suite de la technologie. Et donc, donc tout ceci pour nous développer des projets. Donc bien sûr, là, le rôle de la coopération internationale, le rôle de la coordination est quelque chose qui est très important. Et j'aimerais rajouter un dernier point sur l'aspect multidisciplinaire des technologies spatiales. Aujourd'hui, effectivement, je dirais, nous avons de très bons ingénieurs au Maroc, nous avons de très bons scientifiques, mais nous avons besoin de développer cet aspect multidisciplinaire exigé par les technologies spatiales, qui est très important. Et au niveau des universités, au niveau des écoles d'ingénieurs, au niveau des formations, cet aspect doit être renforcé de manière à pouvoir développer des leaderships, développer des futurs spécialistes, pas simplement techniques, mais qui englobent tous les aspects du spatial. Voilà, et merci.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to add to that, actually, just for your information, the Aerospace Engineering School at UAR, we have trained engineers, our engineers that are, they have the diploma. They are working now in the agency, in the satellite that Morocco has launched, the 2-1 with Mohammed VI, and they are working as a team in there. We have almost 6 to 7 people, engineers, are working already in this field. But just regarding the training, as was mentioned, we have to work as a team. It's multidisciplinary. It's very important that people will learn during their training. They have to learn to work in a team with other people. You cannot have just one area. Regarding what is going on, for example, for satellite, you need to have it lighter. Then you have to include the people from material side. You have the smart sensors. You have electronic, electrical, and also communication you have cameras, and you have communication, and you have solar energy, and it's multidisciplinary, as was mentioned, and you have to work by project. This is what we are doing in our training for engineers. They start working in a project in different areas from the second year, third year, fourth year, and at the end they have their diploma. To get their diploma, they have to get this final year engineering project. But you have to start doing projects as part of the learning of training. I think it's very, very important. Also, to have a transfer of technology, because I know-how, it's a good idea that people who are more advanced technologically or companies will allow students to have an internship. This is one good way for the student to be familiar with what's going on in this. It will be motivated. Motivation is very important. And of course, one of the key issues in all of this is the research and development. Research and development, you have to have sustainable funding that we don't have. I think in Morocco we have funding, but it's not sustainable, so we have 1 year, 2 years, and so on. And this is the driving force, is the graduate students. That's the people, these are the people who can create, who can innovate, who can be the initiator of the incubators and to create a business, things like that, that you have to do also some training all in communication and how to do marketing and so on. But the most importantly, okay, in addition to that, you have to know nationally and regionally what are the applications. And the application will come from each country, because you have in the satellite some parts that are common to everybody. But for the application is a little bit different, and you have to develop that in that sense. For example, if you are looking for agriculture and things, you have to have camera, you have to have specific sensor. There are some intelligence part, you have other things, and so on. It depends on the applications that have developed. You have to have a roadmap regionally and also for each country. And of course, as I mentioned, and was mentioned by others, is the cooperation between South-South and South-North. It's very, and to have a mechanism of sustainable funding. We have PRIMA, for example. PRIMA is a Mediterranean agency that is financing research in agriculture, water, and the nexus between the Mediterranean North and South. And each year they have sustainable things, people will apply and so on. We could have done, we will do the same. I think if we do the same for the space, things like that, and then see the application and have a roadmap regionally and nationally, it will be very, very important, and have cooperating, working as a team, not as an individual, and everything will be shared. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think now we go through the questions from the audience. There was a question, actually it's quite curious. How much does it cost to make a CubeSat including the launching?
Well, it depends on the size and the application, but a typically rule of thumb for a launch was mentioned yesterday. It's about 20 to 30,000 euros or dollars to get into LEO orbit. And when you do a small satellite in a university environment with students, so where the labor force does not cost anything or is very cheap, then you basically just have to pay for the hardware and the components. So let's say a single CubeSat with some payload for simple telecommunications payload you can do for a few 10,000 euros, and then on top of that comes the launch.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the panelists for being with us. I think this brings us to the end of the panel. That was really interesting, and thank you again.
Well, thank you very much to Rania for the great moderation and the panel, of course. We are running a bit late with the time, but I think that's due to the very interesting discussions we've seen here, so thank you very much. We are breaking for a coffee and tea break now. It was originally foreseen to be back at 11:30. That may be a bit short, but please try to be back at least at 11:40. So we give an additional 10 minutes to catch up. Thank you very much.